Imagine a polished horn sitting in a royal treasury, scored with legends that it neutralized poison, cured madness, or secured the favor of kings. In medieval Europe, that object was a treasure, a spiraled horn of impossible length. But the horn didn't come from a horse. It came from the sea. The narwhal is a medium-sized Arctic whale whose nails grow a long, spiraled tooth that juts from the upper jaw like a spear. When the narwhal tusk reached markets in Europe, merchants sold them as unicorn horns, and monarchs believed it. Artifacts made from the narwhal tusk were cut into goblets and displayed as relics with miraculous reputation. The myth of the unicorn and the trade in narwhal tusks fed each other for centuries, until naturalists began to ask what creature exactly could produce such a thing. Why was a tooth mistaken for a horn? Because at a glance, a spiral tusk can look like a single horn, and because magical thinking spreads faster than natural history. Sailors and traders didn't have microscopes. They had stories. The tusk rarity and price only added to the mystique. Fun, slightly gross fact. The narwhal tusk is actually a tooth with sensory nerves, not a magic wand, but the story that grew around it, that's the kind of storytelling we're here to savor. In 1800s London, a dead, odd creature arrived from the antipodes, beak like a duck, tail like a beaver, webbed feet, body fur, and if that wasn't enough, egg laying. European naturalists stared and said, "It's a hoax." Someone must have sewn a duck's bill into a mammal's body. When the first specimen reached Britain, scientists actually took scissors to it to look for the stitches of the prank. This wasn't just incredulity, it was honest confusion at an animal that seemed to break the rules. The platypus forced taxonomists to rethink how animals fit into categories because it fit into several at once. Imagine being a zoologist and opening a crate from Australia, expecting a kangaroo or a possum and pulling out something that looks like evolution was having a joke. The platypus would later be explained. It's a muchotreme, an egg-laying mammal, and today we celebrate its oddness as one of the best examples of nature's capacity for invention. If you ever feel weird about being you, remember nature will out-weird you any day. Some myths are born from absence, a fossilized skeleton that whispers of a beast that used to be. For decades, the Coelacanth lived in the books of paleontologists and pages of museums, a creature of deep geological time that was supposed to have vanished with the dinosaurs. Then in December of 1938, South African museum curator named Marjorie Courtney Latimer recognized a strange fish hauled up by local travelers. Scientists confirmed it. A living coelacanth, a species once confined to stone, was caught in the net of the present. The coelacanth rewired how people think about extinction. Something declared dead by the fossil record 70 million years gone was very much alive, quietly inhabiting deep, cold pockets of the ocean. The rediscovery felt less like a correction and more like a whisper from prehistory saying, "I still exist." This is the category of legend where science catches up and reality is stranger than anyone expected. It's the living fossil story that's perfect for late night tales, ripped sails, monsters 100 feet long, tentacles that wrapped a hull and pulled men to the brine. For centuries, the Kraken, a monstrous many-armed thing, proud storyteller sees. Only much later did naturalists begin to suspect a natural anchor for these tales. Giant squid and colossal squid are real, enormous cephalopods that live deep and rarely meet human eyes. Modern science suggests that giant squid encounters, carcasses, and the scars on sperm whales fed the legend of the Kraken. Or it just could have been called by another name back then. Instead of squid, it was called Kraken. People at sea had little else to explain the massive, unusual things floating or thrashing near a ship. Beaks the size of barrels, arms that might tangle ropes. These are real features of giant squid, giant cephalopods. Mix in moonlight, alcohol, and fear, and the Kraken takes form. Good news though, you probably won't meet a Kraken on your next yacht trip. Slightly bad news, those tentacles are still out there, writing their own old-timey stories in scars and squid ink. "Mermaid!" shouted the lookout. Tales of half-human, half-fish creatures appear in sailors' logs across the centuries, but many reported mermaid sightings were likely manatees or dugongs, slow, rotund marine mammals with human-like eyes and a curious posture when viewed from a rocking deck. Columbus himself reported mermaids. Later naturalists suggest misidentification of manatees by tired, land-hungry men at sea. The physical resemblance, combined with long voyages, longing, and imagination, helped produce mermaid lore that later became a fairy tale. Imagine months at sea staring at the horizon and then seeing a large, slow creature pop up. Would you really say, "Oh, it's a sea cow"? The romance of mermaids beats the biology until you meet the manatee and decide the romance deserves better facts. When the Komodo dragon was first described by Western science in the early 20th century, many in Europe reached for mythic language, like a dragon or living dinosaur. To villagers on the Indonesian islands, the dragons were part of the landscape and story. Large monitor lizards, apex predators of their island. To Europeans, they felt prehistoric and monstrous. The Komodo dragon is not a fire-breathing dragon, but its size and presence explain how local tales and Western imaginations braided together. Dragons didn't disappear, they just got scalier and better at sunbathing. In the dense African rainforest, an animal once described only by rumor and hearsay finally stepped into the light, the Okapi. Okapi? Okapi. Okapi. I don't know if I said that right. For Europeans, its striped legs and giraffe-like head made it a kind of a forest unicorn. Local peoples of the Congo knew it well. To the outside world, it was nearly a myth. The Okapi's story is a reminder that what seems mythical in one culture can be everyday life to another. Okapi are a story about perspective. Sometimes the myth is only an artifact of distance and ignorance. Legends don't only arise from living animals. Sometimes they grow out of bones. Some scholars have argued that fossil remains, like the beak skulls of Protoceratops, dug up on the steppes of Central Asia, inspired griffin legends. Among Eurasian herders and traders, a head that looks like a bird and a body of a mammal could easily be read as a single mythical creature by people who found it without modern taxonomy. This idea blurs the line. A creature can be myth-born from a fossil, and later that myth can feed art and coinage far from the place of discovery. There's something intimate in thinking myths might be how ancient people read the bones of a planet. We make monsters real for reasons beyond ignorance. Stories are tools to teach, to frighten, to sell, and to explain. A narwhal tusk becomes a unicorn's horn because the object wants meaning. A manatee becomes a siren because the lonely sailors need a story. Fossils become griffins because people are pattern makers. And the real animals are not lesser than their myths. They're often more fascinating. A Coelacanth's tale is more miraculous than the most fabrications of the imagination. Here's a useful phrase. Myths and animals are partners in a dance. Science gently takes the mask off. Folklore insists on the mask value. Both are human ways of dealing with the unknown. So what do we do with these stories now? Do we demystify everything until the world is antiseptic? Hardly. Instead, we let the facts open the door to deeper wonder. Knowing that a narwhal's tusk is a tooth does not make the unicorn myth boring. It makes it a human story about value, trade, and how meaning gets attached to things. Discovering the platypus didn't ruin magic, it remodeled our sense of what life could look like. If there's a takeaway, it's this. The boundary between myth and reality is porous. That's where the best stories live. And if you listen carefully to sailors' logs, to elders' tales, to the fossil beds under your feet, you'll find the world speaking in two voices at once. The voice of explanation and the voice of awe. If you loved wandering down these paths with me, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Tell me in the comments which creature you want me to chase next. The Loch Ness stories or the fossil-inspired monsters of the Gobi Desert. And if you have an odd local legend from your hometown that might hide a real animal, share it. I'll read the best ones on the next live. Some animals hide in our stories, and some stories hide in the animals. Have a good night, guys. Bye.